Welcome to Spooky News from Spooky Adventures for March 20th, 2020. This edition of Spooky News is a little different than some of the others, unless you've been living in a cave, and if you've been living in a cave, you're not watching this. You probably know that a lot of the world's getting shut down over the coronavirus pandemic, and, it's almost like something out of a horror movie if you think about it. For those of us who've watched enough horror movies, you've seen something like this in a movie. But because of that, I'm going to try to focus as much as I can on some things that I might not have otherwise covered. I get a lot of news that comes in, and I sort of choose what I want to cover out of a bunch of stuff, just things I find more interesting. But this week I'm going to try to focus more, perhaps not exclusively, but more on things that you can watch at home for streaming and stuff. It just seems appropriate. People are probably looking for things to watch while they're stuck at home, because there's not much going on a lot of places anyway. Everything's getting shut down. So, with that in mind, welcome to this different edition of Spooky News. Remember, Spooky News is supposed to be interactive, like everything from Spooky Ventures. So if you'd like to comment, share, subscribe, like our posts, whatever you want to do. If there's something you want to see, let us know. If you disagree with something I say on one of these things, leave some comments. Let's get some conversation going. Be respectful, but hey, everybody's entitled to a different opinion. With that in mind, just be sure to interact. There's a new article in comicbookresources.com, or it's actually cbr.com, but I believe it stands for Comic Book Resources, that talks about comic book movies being the next evolution in vampire entertainment, and it's talking about Morbius and Blade both coming out. I think it's pretty interesting. Blade could be considered, the Blade movies, the original ones with Wesley Snipes, were considered, I think they're considered some of the early comic book movies that were successful, certainly the earliest crossover horror comic book stuff, probably. They were actually pretty groundbreaking. I mean, maybe they weren't successful in a huge way at the box office, but certainly in terms of cult following and home video and stuff like that, they were very successful. So it's kind of interesting that they suggest that this is starting a new revolution in vampire movies that'll be coming from comic books, because Blade was kind of there before all of it. So have a look at the article, see what you think. If you remember, Universal at one point was looking at doing a connected series of films, the Dark Universe, with all their classic monsters reimagined and all in connected movies. Now, the first one to come out with that in that vein was The Mummy with Tom Cruise, and that pretty well tanked at the box office, effectively killing the Dark Universe. But it looks like Universal is bringing about a revival of a lot of their old classics anyway, including the new Invisible Man. Now, supposedly they're not going to be in a shared universe now, but the Invisible Man did really, really well at the box office, and because of that, they're really pushing forward with some more of these. Now, there's a new vampire film in the works, a new Dracula film in the works from Blumhouse. Now, it's not officially at Universal yet, but, given that Universal had the original Dracula, and that Blumhouse is working really closely with Universal these days, I would be shocked if it winds up not being connected with Universal. So we'll see. In any event, we're going to get a new Dracula movie. The question is, will it be tied in with Universal, and will there be a larger picture to it? Well, probably not a larger picture, but you don't know. I mean, they originally wanted to do that. If they start having some success, they'll probably start pulling those movies together somehow. I mean, they did it back in the old days in the age of black and white movies. Those movies originally were meant as standalone movies, or at least some of them, and then they eventually found ways to weave them all in together. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't know if you're aware, but there's been a Nosferatu project under. Let's start over. Starting over in 3, 2, 1. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a Nosferatu project underway. It's been underway for quite a while, but apparently, according to a post from its creator, David Lee Fisher, the film, which stars Doug Jones as the title character, is just about done. They're so look for it very soon, because they're saying they're just a few recently were just a few shots away from being done with the film. So I would expect it to come out sometime this year. Personally, we'll see. It's should be kind of cool to do a remake of that old show. I mean, everybody focused on Dracula for so long, but Nosferatu came around before that, so. With the whole pandemic thing going on, the ground underneath us sort of seems to be moving in some cases, in that there are all sorts of news coming out throughout the week. And I record these videos throughout the week. I've mentioned that before. So in this case, this sort of affects something you're going to see later. Later in this spooky news segment, I'm going to talk about the fact that there aren't any movies opening, and there probably won't be for a while. Well, this bit here relates to that, but I didn't find out about this until after I had recorded that. Apparently now NBC Universal is going to be the first movie company to start releasing movies directly to be able to be rented for home streaming. And a horror movie is actually one of the first ones that's included in that, The Invisible Man. I believe there's another horror movie in it too. But let me just say that I have advocated for this forever. I thought it would be a great idea for them to do it. Now I understand. Oh, The Hunt. The Hunt is the other one they're doing, which just came out last weekend. The Invisible Man came out a little while ago too. Now, both of these are supposed to be available on home video today, the 20th. Now, I'm not sure what apps you have to use to do it, but apparently it's $20. Now, they say it's a 48-hour rental, so I don't know if that means you can watch it as many times as you want in that period of time. I mean, $20 sounds a lot when you compare it to the price of a ticket to go see a movie, but if you make it 2 people watching it, 2 tickets to see the movie, and if you can watch it more than once, it's not a bad price. And like I say, I've been advocating for this for a long time. I'm sure the studios aren't overly crazy because it puts it open to pirating pretty easily. But I don't know. I think maybe this is the wave of the future, and it just took this pandemic to get it going. So you probably don't want to go to theaters. I don't know. Who will see? Like I said, the ground's changing underneath us. Maybe none of the theaters will be open. I know some areas have closed theaters. So if you want to go see either The Hunt or Invisible Woman, you should be able to watch them at home on your TV, stream them. Uh, I'll share the article and we can hopefully figure out how it goes along. If I come around with a real link to where you can stream them, I'll include that in the details here too. So I've got a couple days since I'm recording this, or a day or so before I have to finish the video, so I'll take a look then and see what I can find for you guys. A couple more horror movies that are delayed from because of the coronavirus pandemic are Antlers, which is the new Guillermo del Toro, and the Marvel Universe horror movie New Mutants. So, makes perfect sense. All the theaters are pretty much shut down now, so it wouldn't do any good for them to release them into theaters at the moment. So I said that this edition was going to be focused a lot on news about things you could stream and stuff, and that's absolutely true. And that Shudder, the horror streaming service, is offering a 30-day trial for new customers. So you can get it for free for 30 days, watch horror movies as much as you want. And the code, I believe, is shut in. I'll share the article to have a double check on that, but you can get your Shudder for free for a month. Well, you guys know about my love of lists, and I'm going to share another one. This is 10 movies inspired by real stories or folk tales. And some of these seem pretty obvious. Urban legend, for one. Is Sleepy Hollow. Who doesn't know the tale of Sleepy Hollow? But there are quite a few good ones on the list, and I have a hunch you can probably find most of these to stream, so that's a good thing. Have a look at the list, look around for the movies, see if you're interested in watching them, and see if you can find them, and have some enjoyable horror film watching experiences. We do a lot of lists here. You guys know I like lists. Well, Mashable has a new one. And rather being about movies per se, it lists the best streaming services for horror fans, and it actually kind of narrows it down by different genres of horror. And if you look at the genre, it'll tell you which ones have the most movies and the best movies and things like that. So I'll be sure to share that list, give you an idea of some of the other services out there. Well, as I said, we're sort of focusing this episode on things you can stream, and there's a new article that came out. Now it's specifically geared towards Friday the 13th, as in, last Friday. Movies you could stream for to celebrate Friday the 13th, and it's just a lot of horror movies. I'm not overly crazy, but some of them, although Oculus is on the list, and I love Oculus, I think that's a great movie. They've got a couple of others that I'm a little less enthused about. For instance, Cabin in the Woods, Quiet Place, and some of the others I've really not seen or haven't seen them in a very long time. So, in any event, I'll be sharing this list. You can have a look. It tells you where to stream them, gives you a little description of the movies, and it's a good starting point. I know sometimes if you get into like Hulu or Netflix, it can be hard to find a movie you're looking for. The user interfaces aren't the best out there as far as I'm concerned, because they've got so many movies and it's just hard to sort of pin down things. So it's always good to have a list like this to kind of look for things. And besides that, I love lists. So enjoy your happy streaming of some horror movies. There's another new list that's come out, which is kind of appropriate for this time of the world, which is a list of 10 best horror movies about isolation. Interestingly enough, they didn't include John Carpenter's The Thing, and I admit that there are, 8, 10 people at the beginning of the movie there, something like that. But really, I think in a lot of ways, a big lot of the horror on that is the isolation of being there where no one can come to help if you need help. But it's a cool list. Be sure to check it out. Maybe you can find most of these for streaming. There aren't any movies opening this weekend. Originally, Quiet Place 2 was supposed to open, but again, because of the coronavirus situation, they've postponed that until indefinitely. So there are no horror movies opening this weekend. I'm not sure if there are any movies opening this weekend. Think about it. If you're a movie studio and you've spent a ton of money on a movie, you want it to do well in the theater. And if nobody's going to the theaters, it doesn't make sense to release it right now. So for a while, we probably won't see any movies opening in the theaters. But we've still got home video, right? I had originally recorded another rap segment, but this is. I decided ultimately I wanted to do a little more with the rap segment this time around than I normally do, which is to tell you all that these are weird times, and I understand it's getting a little rough for everybody to get through it all, but you just hang in there. I know this isn't the kind of thing I normally say, but stay safe, and keep yourself occupied with horror movies, horror books, great stuff to occupy your mind with, and get through this. We're all kind of in it together, folks, so hang in there and get through this, and we'll see you next week for another edition of Spooky News. That's a wrap for this time. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.